Mr. Speaker, it's the same way. I cannot talk about wet dreams because I don't know what it is like to ejaculate in the night, Mr. Speaker. Good girls, they'll never get corner office. Be as bad as Millie Odhiambo, you will be the mother of this house. I am a bad girl, and as a bad girl, I'm here serving my 4th term.
She is not wrong. We as women are always conditioned to take up as little space as possible, be nice, be soft, be sweet, take care of everyone else, put their needs before your own, be subservient, submit. God, I heard that word a gazillion times in the Christian community that I was raised in. And in the end, when I look at it, those women don't get much. And then it's the women who are like go-getters, doing their thing, speaking up. They're the ones who make change for future generations.
And I just love that she gets to come home after a day of telling people, pull themselves into line.
Knuckleheads.
To someone who just seems to adore and cherish her, at least from the outside.
Yeah.
You know, I love it.
And probably that's why she's able, to some degree, to do the things, because in an African culture, the men can be very, very patriarchal and quite dominant. And I imagine that having him there actually is the support she needs to say the things she needs to say for the women who can't.
Roots and Rigour, Rigour and flow. Roots and Rigour, Rigour and flow. Roots and Rigour, Rigour and flow. Rigour and flow.
One. Welcome back to Rigour and Flow with me, Aiwan.
And me, Tamanda, the show where business meets love.
And culture meets critique.
Lovely. We have another Notes from the Margins.
Yes, we do.
What are you going to be bringing to the table today?
Today, I am wanting to answer the question, which is, why are there no Black African documentary filmmakers in the genre of natural history, wildlife, conservation,
that is juicy.
filmmaking, right?
There's no household names.
There really aren't any household names. So I'm very, very curious about why that is.
Okay.
And so that's what I'm bringing to the table.
I love that. I'm definitely up for diving into that. I am bringing to the table a segment on one of my absolute heroes and modern icons.
Okay.
Millie Odhiambo,
Hey.
the original African bad girl.
She really is.
I love her. I'm definitely fangirling her.
She literally takes no prisoners.
She really doesn't. So I want to dive into that. And then in the third segment, we're going to be responding to one of our normal community questions, provocations segments, which is?
Do we have abnormal community questions?
Well, this one felt abnormal relative to the others. So, yeah, I'll say we do. Do you want to say what it is?
No, I think you should.
Okay, let's be frank. In this segment, we are going to be responding to the YouTube famous commentator, Election Palava. Now, Election Palava happens to be an old peer from my school who I actually don't know who they are, but they left a very
telling,
strong comment under one of our episodes. So we're going to be responding to that.
And it really is going to be...
It's going to be fun.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be engaging. And yes, I can't wait for that portion of the show.
Excellent.
Shall we
get going?
I think we should get into it, yes.
And I know it's because you want to get to the final segment.
Yeah.
You're quite excited about it.
So, African gays, yeah. Millie Odhiambo,
Done.
great, right.
Segment 3.
Yep, here we go. But before we get into the episode today, if you are enjoying Rigour and Flow and it is doing all the things that you want a show to do, providing analysis, critique, it's thought-provoking, it's engaging, it's all of those things, then please, please, please do subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Do like the video, leave a comment, because we love responding to people's comments and knowing how you feel about things. And on the audio-only platforms, definitely leave a review, because that helps other people to see us and give them the opportunity to dive into the world of Rigour and Flow. So thank you so much for subscribing.
Now back to the episode.
Tell me all the things about Millie Odhiambo.
Okay, so Millie Odhiambo, the original African bad girl by her own reckoning, but also I believe she is the original African bad girl. Mm-hmm. She is some kind of multi-talented human, best known in the social media world for her role as an MP and her role in politics in Kenya. But quite beyond that, she is a lawyer. She is an author. She is apparently an actor and a poet and a coach and a mentor and a philanthropist. Like, what doesn't she do? And a motivational speaker, which I can definitely see.
I could see her motivating a whole generation of both men and women. Listen, she is a multi-hyphenate. She was one before it was famous.
Fashionable.
Yeah, and fashionable to do so.
100% she is.
I'm here for it.
Yeah. I didn't even know she did all those things.
No, same.
Until I came across the fact that she recently has published her own book.
Okay.
Can you believe? Do you want to guess the name of her book?
The original African Bad Girl.
No, but it should be called that as well.
Okay. No, I don't know the name of the book.
It's called Rig or Be Rigged. I feel like it embodies all of her energy.
I think that she's saying some things without saying some things.
Exactly.
But also saying them quite blatantly.
100%. So I guess the reason I've brought her to the table this week is just for no other reason than the joy of knowing she exists. Mm-hmm. Every single time I see a Millie reel on social media, it just fills my heart with joy. I literally will watch her things on repeat because I just don't remember seeing that kind of bold example of African womanhood growing up. And I love that she exists. She came into Parliament recently, which is obviously predominantly male, and just told them all about themselves and the ways they go about talking about women's bodies and making policies for us like they know anything about what we go through. And I think we should listen to that reel now and what she says in it.
Is that as a man you have never had periods and you have no clue what it is like to have periods. So please don't talk for me. Honorable Kajwang, you have never carried a baby for 9 months. Maybe there me and you are the same. But most of the women here have carried babies for 9 months. So you cannot talk for them. They know what it is to labor for 9 months. So don't talk for us on issues of women. Don't purport to know issues relating to women. Mr. Speaker, it's the same way. I cannot talk about wet dreams because I don't know what it is like to ejaculate in the night, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we are all very different as men and as women. And therefore, let us keep our lane.
I can't with her. It's all the hey, 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 when she starts talking about wet dreams in the background for me. They're just like, hey, everyone's clutching their pearls.
They really are. But I just love that she says the thing with no filter whatsoever.
None.
And she's right. Like, we're not talking about your wet dreams and your bodies. What gives you lot the right to tell us about anything? I love that she says that kind of thing in
She's
Parliament.
fearless.
Absolutely.
She's fearless. I really appreciate what she does, honestly. Yeah. And she's funny with it as well.
Very, very funny. There's also another, I think this is my favorite Millie reel, where she's really talking about what it takes to make it in politics as a woman. And I found that
in Africa specifically, I think.
Heavily patriarchal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I want to play that one as well, because I just think she literally gives all the younger women in politics, here is the roadmap, here is the playbook. Don't listen to what they tell you about how to be.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to start by saying that one of my favorite books is Good Girls Never Get the Corner Office. Mr. Speaker, this is in response to what you are telling me earlier in the morning when you are urging me to be a good example to the girls. The younger ones who are doing their first term, Mr. Speaker, if they are good girls, they'll never get corner office. Be as bad as Millie Odhiambo, you will be the mother of this house. I am a bad girl, and as a bad girl, I'm here serving my 4th term. So do not be cheated like the African culture, where you are told have decorum, dress nicely, be kind, be nice. I'm telling you, you will go nowhere. Be a bad girl like me and you'll get somewhere.
She is so good, honestly.
But you know what? She's not wrong. She is not wrong. We as women are always conditioned to take up as little space as possible, be nice, be soft, be sweet, be caring, compliant, take care of everyone else, put their needs before your own, be subservient, submit. God, I heard that word a gazillion times in the Christian community that I was raised in. And in the end, when I look at it, those women don't get much.
Yeah. That's 100%
They just get walked all over.
Yeah.
Like a doormat.
Yeah.
And then it's the women who are like go-getters, doing their thing, speaking up. They're the ones who, A, get what they want to get in life, but they're also the ones who make change for future generations. The suffragettes were not sitting in a corner being subservient. You know what I mean? The activists that we know of in our world aren't, you know, sitting in a corner, but they're affecting change for women, for girls, for future generations.
Absolutely.
So yeah, she's right about that. And also the corner office, that yeah, if you're into those corporate things and you want the big corner office, you're going to have to make some noise.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in a way that kind of goes for everyone. Just doing your work and keeping your head down does not get you noticed. It just gets you more work.
Preach on it. That is really, really a thing it takes. Well, it took me a heck of a long time to realize that it's not just about putting your head down, working really, really hard and proving yourself.
Yeah.
And I think it comes back to what you were saying. I always think to myself, you would never need to tell someone to be submissive and to be compliant unless they were truly powerful and you were afraid of that power.
There you go.
And of course, look at her causing a ruckus.
Yeah.
And you know what I love about her most is that in releasing her book, there has been like some videos going around about how her friends and family have responded to or spoken about her autobiography. And her husband is one of the people that speaks. And he is so sweet and so loving and so gentle. And I just love that she gets to come home after a day of telling people to pull themselves into line
knuckleheads
to someone who just seems to adore and cherish her, at least from the outside. You know, I love it.
And probably that's why she's able to some degree to do the things, because in an African culture, you know, the men can be very, very patriarchal and quite dominant. And I imagine that having him there actually is the support she needs to say the things she needs to say for the women who can't.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's my little psychoanalysis. I don't even know.
That's your little analysis.
My little analysis.
I like it. I agree with it. And I love the fact that in the middle of his video, he called her babe. And I was like, I don't think I've ever heard an African uncle go, yes, babe.
No.
I was just like, I love it. I love it. This is giving us all the roadmap of what we need to do.
Exactly.
Choose the right one.
And it's so funny because we spoke about in one of our episodes on generations and rites of passages, we talked about the importance of being in the Council of Elders to understand, A, how to navigate the world, but also what's to come. Because in that episode, we talked about how 40-year-olds didn't want to be classed in the council of 50, 60, 70-year-olds. So we referenced Kendra Lindsay's Instagram reel, and how she was saying, no, it's important that you are, because you need to be prepared for what is about to come.
Yeah.
And the only way to do that is to talk to those who've already been there.
Yeah.
You know, and I think what I like about Millie Odhiambo is that she speaks to that. She's saying, girls, I know because I've been there.
Yeah.
And I am the bad girl that I am because I don't do all those silly
compliance,
nonsense
submissive things.
That the society says I have to be. You know, I'm here because I take up space.
Yeah.
And I say the things that need to be said. I am the original African bad girl. Learn from me. That's why I'm here.
Yeah. And let me fast track your progress.
Yes.
I completely couldn't agree more. And I have to say, watching her, I'm reminded that I have many other Millies who maybe aren't on social media, on reels, that have come into my life. And I think
Give them their flowers. Who are they?
Like Layla Cogborough, who was my manager, or my manager's manager. She managed the whole team as a director at Black Thrive. Before I worked for her or with her, I had never worked under a Black African woman who was not afraid to speak her mind. And they really do fast track what's possible, not least because I remember being under her leadership, and when I would say something in a meeting or push back on something in every other organization before, it would cause such a ruckus and I'd be seen as difficult. Whereas her, she just respected what you had to say and then said, okay, let's do this. And she opened doors for you in all sorts of ways. Yeah. Same with Yvonne Field, who in fact we work with both of us a lot now.
She is a powerhouse of a woman.
Unbelievable woman at the Embodies Initiative and the director there. And yeah, she just, when you see women like that, they just give you a roadmap. I can say both of those examples have changed the way I think about how I work and what I believe is possible for me.
This, I'm so glad that you pointed that out, because sometimes we always say that we often hear, it's always white men in the seats of power, and the younger white men are on this fast track and they just seem to step into these higher level roles. But if you look at it carefully, if the CEO is a white man and the managing director is a white man and all the other execs are white men, and you're a 25-year-old white man coming into that space, and you're seeing that, why wouldn't you believe that you also can be the CEO and the exec or the managing director, right?
Yep.
Because you can see it.
Yep.
So of course you're going to learn from your council of elders that you're surrounded by all day, every day. And of course you're going to be fast-tracked because they are going to understand you, you understand them, and they are going to give you the tools that you need and the leg up, like you had with Layla, to get to where you need to be.
Yeah.
So my thing is, Millie Odhiambo is the CEO, right, that we're seeing. Layla,
100%.
Yvonne Field, all of these black women are really, really important, because if you see it, you can be it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, well, actually, if she can be the owner of this or the CEO of that, then I too can do that as a young black woman.
100%. And I think that's been the shift. It's like one of those situations I remember when I first met both of them. I often cry in front of them, and it's so weird to me because I cry in front of you, but outside of you, I don't really cry that much.
Yeah.
And it's because sometimes you're just like, whoa, this thing exists, and a whole world becomes possible for you that you never imagined.
Exactly.
So there we go.
And that's the importance of being in the Council of Elders. And I hope one day to also be one of the elders
from whom others can receive counsel.
Exactly.
Likewise, actually.
Yeah, I think so.
We'll be the queer council of elders.
We'll be the queer council of elders. Yes, absolutely. Next up,
we have your segments, which is all about, you said, where are all the black people in conservation filmmaking?
Absolutely. And wildlife storytelling. Now, I have always been obsessed with anything wildlife.
Oh, really?
As a kid, my mum bought me these, it's very old school. I come from an old school time. But it was like a kind of binder, like a big, those binders, those ring binders.
Oh, yeah.
And it had like cards in them. And each card spoke about a particular animal. So it might be a card on like the giraffe or the gazelle or the rhino.
The binders
the binders.
And I know the kind of cards you fit in.
If I can find a picture of it, I'll put it in. But I was obsessed with them. I would always read them, always study them. I was obsessed. And then obviously as I got older and I got a TV, I started getting into David Attenborough. I mean, he's just a legend. He is just an icon for me. I adore him. When I hear his voice, I'm like, oh, I'm ready to settle in and learn about some animals. He really is an institution. And so I've always been obsessed with it. And I think recently, because I remember going to Kenya to shoot Kenyan Christian Queer.
Yeah.
And while I was there, I was tentatively shooting some interviews for a separate film, just to get a feel for people that are out there, what their stories might be, and so on and so forth. Anyway, we went to the home of an activist, artist, writer, and it happened to be overlooking one of the conservation areas in Kenya. And as we were there talking, you could literally see like, the water buffaloes or whatever roaming. Do you could see them through. And I remember this person that we're interviewing telling us that, sometimes the leopards would come onto her own
land,
her not even her land, her house, the balcony of her house, and the dogs would go crazy. And so I was like, but what if you came out at night and then there was a leopard there? She was just like, well, we just live and we'll work it out. I was like, ooh, I don't know if I want to work out anything with a leopard. But that's how close. But one of the things she said was that all of that land used to be owned by the indigenous, well, not even owned, it was just land of the people.
The indigenous people.
That's it, you know what I mean? You roamed and you did whatever you had to do. And that now it was owned by white conservationists. And actually, black people can't go on that land. And I remember thinking, wow, that's actually crazy that you can't go on your own indigenous land in your country.
Yeah.
It was crazy. And obviously we tackled that in the first episode of season 3 when we talked about land rights and settler colonialism. So that kind of got me thinking, who's telling these stories and why don't we hear these stories through the lens of African people? Where is the black David Attenborough?
Yeah.
Where are the black documentary filmmakers doing natural history and wildlife filmmaking? And so that led me onto a Facebook post.
Okay.
And on the Facebook post, they were asking a similar question. It had been posed by, I don't know, some journalist. A journalist had posed the question essentially. And then there were comments underneath. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. And I want to read a couple of the comments because I thought that was an interesting perspective.
Okay.
And it actually ended up being the stimulus for me going down the rabbit hole to try and get to the bottom of this issue.
Yeah.
Which maybe is an issue, but I think it's an issue because I think we should all be telling the stories of where we live, not just one particular lens.
Oh, I'd love to hear it. I want to get into it with you. So yeah, let's talk about those comments.
So the first comment said, the reason why is because in most cases, Africans grew up in cohabitation with animals, and they still are to a large extent in most parts of Africa, including Zambia, Zimbabwe, and South Africa. People coexist with animals, roaming freely in their communities, and they are not fascinated by wildlife because they know how they live. Only a person who sees these animals as foreign to them would bring television crew to film them. And by the way, if you watch videos from these national parks, it's only tourists who are attacked by these animals because they don't know how to treat them. Locals are never attacked. So
this was somebody called Robert Shivambu.
Yeah. And then the second comment is, most African countries are not safe to do documentaries because of wars and rebels.
Oh, no.
Most countries' animals have been hunted to extinction and are without rangers to protect them. In Nigeria, they have even resulted in eating dogs and frogs because the animals who are native in that country are no longer there. In Zimbabwe last year, a community killed and shared an elephant in full view of cameras. South Africa is just about the only country where animals are truly protected and not bothered, together with Serengeti in Kenya. Most African countries don't even have hippos, lions, and all kinds of wildlife because they have been all killed.
Oh wow!
Don't say
that was
that's
damning.
It was damning in a lot of ways, because it's damning on them too, because there's a lot of stuff in there.
No, the stuff that they're saying is there's some absolute fiction in their comment. Like, I definitely got
all
some
the animals are dead.
We have driven them out. We've killed them all.
We've killed them. We've eaten them, and they are gone.
We're now just left with frogs
and dogs.
I don't know where that person is getting their information.
It's like, why did they bring Nigeria into it as well? It's like, leave us out of it. We have some animals.
Well, the glaring absence is no Botswana. And it says the only place that cares about conservation is South Africa and the Serengeti. I'm like, Botswana has some pretty interesting history around conservation. But anyway,
you've got some of the most progressive laws around conservation.
And also recently a lot of fighting. I don't know if you remember in Botswana, we were in the news in I think it was BBC and Sky, because they were allowing for the killing of elephants again, which the former president had outlawed and was big on conservation. So it produced this massive debate back home that Westerners picked up and were like, how dare you kill elephants? And it became a whole palaver.
You got a new president last year, right?
Yeah.
And so he's the one that has...
He's brought it back, and his ministers have brought it back. Well, I mean, this cuts right to the heart of what this whole segment is about and what the first commenter said, which is, if you are a Westerner and you have not grown up in areas of wildlife like many local people have, of course you think that wildlife is something from a Disney movie or The Lion King or Bambi or The Jungle Book.
Dumbo.
Dumbo, right? Of course it's exotic and fascinating for you, and the idea of culling them would be preposterous. By the way, I don't agree with culling them either, but your relationship to nature is entirely different to if you grow up in those lands, you are trying to live in those lands with those animals, and the population of those animals, for example, elephants in Botswana, is humongous. It's the highest concentration of elephants anywhere in the world, and they are trampling your crops, a danger to your offspring, a danger to the roads that you have built, and all sorts of other things.
Also, I saw videos where they literally just go into people's houses and put their trunk in and just take their food. You've left one pot of stew somewhere, and some elephant just takes destroys your trees.
I was going to say, that's the best of it. They trample your stuff.
Yeah. I mean, they rub their bum on trees, then they come into your yard, start rubbing their bum, and then the tree just falls down and you're relying on that tree for fruit. Come on now, Nelly.
Nelly the elephant went to my house.
you know what I mean?
It's true. It's true. I mean, so yeah, our conception of what this wildlife is. I mean, I do take the point of the first commentator. If that wildlife is completely normal to you, of course you don't look at it like an outsider who comes there and wants to make a film about it. I'm not saying that's the case for everyone, but it is the case for a lot of people, you know.
I think about growing up in Greenwich. So Greenwich is a borough in London, which is where I grew up.
A royal borough.
And it's now a royal borough. It wasn't when I was growing up, but it became a royal borough sometime in the 2000s. My estate, Meridian Estate, literally was next door to one of the main tourist areas. So the Cutty Sark, the Queen's House, I think it's called, like the Royal Observatory, all of that. So it's literally, but it's right by the Cutty Sark. So on the weekend, you get inundated, for example, with tourists. And they would, you know, come and do their tourist thing with their cameras and all of that good stuff. I mean, I'm going to come on to something else around that. But one of the things people would ask me once I left London is, have you been to the Cutty Sark? Into the Cutty Sark? Have you been to Big Ben?
Yeah. All these famous
Have you been
London
to Buckingham Palace, for example? And I'd be like, no, why would I go there? I mean, I lived in London. Till today, I don't even know what they do in Big Ben.
Really?
I've never.
That is why I came all the way from Botswana. I mean, I get it, but I came all the way from Botswana to see the red phone boxes, to see the red buses, to see the Big Ben as a child. Obviously, that was like one of our big family holidays where they were introducing me to one half of my culture.
There you go. And me, who was born and raised there, have still not been. I don't even know if I've even been inside the Cutty Sark.
Wow,
Maybe we went on a school trip, I don't know, but I have no recollection of the Cutty Sark. I have no recollection of Big Ben going there. Buckingham Palace, I think I did end up going with a friend because they'd come from Romania and wanted to see it. And then we went, just the gates, you know, where the gates are, for them to see that.
But that's it.
I don't even know if I've seen the changing of the guards. I've never been, right? So there's a familiarity that means that you just
take for granted.
You take it
the
for granted.
Normalness of it all.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so I think that I do understand where he's coming from.
Yeah.
When he says what he's saying, so I definitely get that.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one though, because I think we can still come back to the why are there no filmmakers? I think that's kind of a slightly different question. But even as I think back to growing up in Botswana,
no, but I think. For me, I'm saying, if you're an African filmmaker, would you prioritize filming animals that you see every day? So I think it does link to it.
I think it does, but I want to come back to that in a second because I want to talk about this whole normalization thing first. And thinking back to Botswana. So I grew up in Botswana where wildlife was commonplace. And I'll be honest, me and most of my peers, including Botswana, we were actually genuinely fascinated by wildlife. Okay. And we went on conservation trips at school and we all enjoyed doing those things. Now, a lot of us lived in the city rather than in the rural areas where you are really facing that kind of battle with some of it's not a battle, some of it's coexisting with animals, but sometimes there is a battle over if that animal wants to trespass into where you grow your crops, there's a confrontation, right?
Yes.
And I think in that sense, my more modern kind of city upbringing differed from my mum, who really grew up in the land with that wildlife immediately around her, and so really did normalize it. And there is a kind of lens I have because my mother sat on Botswana's tourism board for many years as an African bad gal herself, actually. And she kind of told me how the government in Botswana had specifically reduced the cost for local people of doing tourism in the north of the country where all the wildlife is. And Botswana is known for being quite expensive to visit for Westerners. And that's because they limit the amount of tourism, but make a premium on prices because they don't want mass tourism there. And they don't want to do major kind of tourist enclosures. They want to keep the earth as natural as possible. And so they have game reserves, but not a lot of the things you might see in South Africa or Kenya, for example. You don't really have that kind of mass tourism there. But anyway, she described to me how local people just often wouldn't have seen the animals because they just take it for granted. They live around it. And so the government actively wanted local people to understand what is it that foreign people come for and what makes it so special for them and how can we open this up for you. So I definitely agree that there is a massive element of that. Like I know many people back home who just would never have gone to the north and seen the wealth of wildlife that we have.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel that. And it's so interesting because those sorts of initiatives really do work. Because one thing I do remember quite keenly growing up, my primary school in Greenwich had a little wildlife enclosure attached to it. And we would always go into that wildlife enclosure, like as part of, I don't know, it must have been a unit of work.
Or something.
Yeah, enrichment or part of a unit of work on like the natural environment. And we would go in there. And I remember always being fascinated because we'd go at a certain time of the year where the frogs had laid their spawn.
Yeah, and then waiting for the tadpoles.
Yeah, so you see that thing that's like that mushy thing.
Spawn.
It's got a little black, exactly, the spawn. Look at you doing your
Sorry,
face.
but I used to love it as a kid. You know, you're a kid.
You're just like,
be
whoa.
Amazed by all sorts of gross stuff. But as an adult, I'm like, that's weird.
Yeah, exactly. And then we'd come back a little bit later and we'd see they'd turn into tadpoles.
Yep.
Then we'd come back later still and see they turn into frogs.
Yep.
And there was something about appreciating that natural environment, seeing the woodlouse and how they rolled up into a little ball, you know, when you pick them up, and worms and things like that, different birds and stuff like that. And even though we were in inner city London, in pretty much the poorest borough, I think, in the nation, Greenwich is. But we got
Worse
to
than Haringey, for example.
I think that apparently Greenwich borough is one of the poorest.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah, which is actually kind of crazy when you think about it, because it's the royal borough.
Yeah.
You know. But yeah, seeing that slice of wildlife in the middle of inner city London was actually really beautiful, because it did give me an understanding of the natural world and it gave me an appreciation. So I really love that your country have that. Like, no, appreciate what you've got. It is something meaningful and we have a responsibility to protect and preserve it and appreciate it.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. And actually you saying that is reminding me that there's two things going on. There is this both normalization, but of course there are people back home who are deeply passionate about conservation of the land, of the people. My mum is exactly what I was going to say. My mum is a prime example of it. Her whole life has been dedicated to agroforestry, environmentalism. But also, if you do travel to the north of Botswana, or even to any kind of game reserve that, like you described from your childhood in Botswana, those local conservationists and guides that you meet there have such a deep knowledge of the environment. And it's not textbook knowledge.
No.
It's not science knowledge. It can be that as well, but it's also this deep, lived, embodied knowledge, because they live alongside that. They know it. It's all they've ever known.
Yeah, and it's ancestral. So it got passed on to them from their fathers, from their grandfathers, from their, from their mothers.
It's almost taken for granted, but also deep if you know what questions to ask.
Yes.
And if you're willing to probe.
Yes.
It's not, like you say, this Western or Eurocentric eye on the thing. It is a very African understanding of that thing.
Exactly. And so then thinking about all of these things and reading the comments, thinking about what we've just discussed, I was like, so then why aren't we shooting films about this? You know what I mean? Why is it still only Western crews and companies who seem to make the big blockbuster Netflix documentaries on planet Earth, you know, or Africa and the Serengeti or whatever, you know?
Why is it Attenborough's voice, you know, who I love, by the way.
I love
grew up
his
watching
voice.
him. But obviously it's any of his wildlife programs are entirely devoid of the people around them. You could watch
is it.
And never know anything about the people and the populations who are truly at one and living in those places.
Exactly. They focus so highly on the animals in that environment. You could watch these programs and actually be forgiven for thinking that there were no humans in these environments at all. As you're watching a dung beetle move a bit of shit across the savannah.
Of the Kalahari.
Of the Kalahari, you know, you'd think that there were no human beings there at all. But I think I ended up listening to an episode from BBC Sounds, and we'll definitely link to that as well in our mentions and resources on our Substack, which you should definitely subscribe to,
that's
I
true.
might add. And a few points were brought up. So there are Black filmmakers trying to shoot documentaries and who actually have shot documentaries. But what came out, which was actually quite shocking, is that access to the wildlife on a lot of these parks, what do you call them?
Reserves. I think I already have a sense where this might be going.
Yeah, the access to it is a massive issue. That's the first thing. So a lot of these large swathes of land are protected for wildlife, right?
Yeah.
And prices are set so that locals can't actually afford to access those places.
Yeah.
And the permits to film in them are ridiculously expensive, meaning that it's only big broadcasters with deep pockets that can afford the permits to film in those places.
Right.
And then on top of that, access to Black scientists
Yeah.
who can speak to that is also very difficult to find as well.
Yeah.
So it's like a double whammy.
Yeah, that
sense.
makes total sense.
Yeah.
And also then there's another thing, which is like, yeah, of course, as you said, that cuts off indies entirely or smaller production companies. But also actually, I imagine if African filmmakers were doing it, it wouldn't just be scientists. It would also be local elders who could explain that thing to them. People could probably do that much better than these big companies. But if you can't get to the wildlife, where do you start?
Yeah, but remember, okay, and this is another thing about knowledge, which is something I really want to talk about, and what knowledge is considered valid and valuable. Because from working in the entertainment industry, if you don't have a scientist with all of the qualifications and this, that, and the other that they recognize, then it's not seen as verifiable.
That's true.
And therefore not valid.
It's like research in
It's
that
like
regard.
research.
It's like,
so you end up defaulting to those who've gone to Western institutions to study this particular thing, and they generally tend to be white people. So I think that is a very valid point about the access, because although we have the indigenous knowledge, is it considered valid
knowledge
by these broadcasters?
Yep.
And that's a whole other conversation. What I found fascinating in that episode was there was a production company who did try to do a big budget series of that nature, of that sort of David Attenborough scale, and it wiped them out.
Oh, what?
It wiped them out because the costs were so prohibitive in terms of access, in terms of equipment. It was like so expensive. I found that quite sad that a local African company couldn't compete with the big broadcasters. I think the other thing is that was mentioned in that episode is that we've never really developed an audience for those films in Africa, if that makes sense.
Interesting. So are the main consumers of that type of film people in the West then?
That's what they're saying.
Really?
And because it's not that people in Africa aren't interested.
Yeah.
They've just not been necessarily given that from an African perspective. They've been given the David Attenboroughs and stuff. And so that's what they're accustomed to.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of gaze and style of storytelling that they're used to. So we haven't actually built up an audience for it.
Yeah.
Even me, sometimes when I click on a natural history or wildlife program and I don't hear David Attenborough's voice, I actually struggle.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean,
it's not real to me almost.
Yeah, it's actually, it's a weird thing to say, but I can relate to that because he was such the backdrop of my childhood.
Yeah.
And also there's something about Attenborough that is, people call my father the David Attenborough of geography, just jokingly.
I can
he's a
see
geography
that.
teacher.
Yeah.
They're the same generation. You know, my dad's 86. David Attenborough must be what, 90 something now?
Yeah.
And they both kind of like warm and benevolent. And I don't know, it was so, as much as I can critically evaluate what the issues are with that style of documentary filmmaking I would be lying if I said I don't have a certain warmth or nostalgia. And I too sometimes turn on wildlife stuff and it just doesn't hit.
Yeah.
But I guess the real thing is that, you know, these Netflixes, these BBCs that commission, there's no good reason you couldn't be bringing in a new generation of different voices.
Exactly.
Like, for example, if you were given the opportunity to work on a wildlife documentary, would you do it?
Oh, yeah, I'd love it. I'd be like, and as the gazelle moves through the savannah, we suddenly see a flash of a tail.
Ivid Attenborough.
There we go. Ivid Attenborough.
I would definitely, with that voice, I would definitely tune in.
But yeah, so I think like there is a real assumption that Africans don't watch documentaries just more broadly.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's true. I think we do want to, but it has to be nurtured. You know, if you look at the stuff that's put up on Netflix for the African market, it is generally drama and reality TV.
Yeah, I was about to say Young African and Famous.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. It's sort of live action stuff and that. So I think audiences have to be nurtured.
Yeah.
And you have to give them stuff so that they can work out what it is they like. Do you see what I mean?
Absolutely.
Whereas unfortunately, a lot of people just are like, well, that's what they currently like. So that's all I'm going to give them because I just want to make my money.
100%.
As opposed to thinking of the future. So I think there's something about future planning for that. Another thing that came up, which I thought was really interesting in the episode, was our sort of fears, suspicions, and superstitions. So around things like water.
Right.
So when you get into the realm of like, there was a series, Blue Planet.
Yes.
You know, and it's about the oceans, right? Now, I don't know about other people, but certainly I know in the household I grew up in, there was a lot of fear around water and spirits that exist in those bodies of water. So we had like Mami Water, which is an I don't know what you'd call her, like a sort of spirit, a spiritual being who is not very nice, quite malevolent. And we would often pray against any Mami Wata spirit. And we'd pray against the marine kingdom because we believed that there were there's a whole realm under the water, you know. So it's almost like...
But was she actually malevolent or did colonialism make her malevolent?
I would say colonialism made her malevolent.
Yeah.
Because what we're starting to discover now, or at least what we're trying to do now in the 21st century, is reclaim our gods and goddesses and untarnish their names and their reputations, for want of a better phrase. And so there's a lot of suspicion around that. So I wonder if also that plays into people's reluctance to engage with that side of the wildlife side of things. Because if you want to do a nature documentary on the oceans, you got to go to the ocean, you got to go into the ocean, and you got to do stuff with the ocean. And you're not going to be doing it in the daytime. You're also going to be doing it at night. I wonder how that plays in.
Super interesting. I hadn't thought about it. And actually now you're talking about it, I kind of think, yeah, actually from an audience perspective, I get it. But I'm also thinking about the context I grew up in where we had a similar thing. So I would always buy and wear a little wood carving, which I'll try and find a picture of, called a nyami nyami. And it was basically the river god from the Zambezi and the Victoria Falls. And we grew up with that in the culture because that was, you know, but even if people had become Christian, this was not seen as at odds with our local ways of being when you live close to the land and to that water source, right? In the Delta, Zambezi River.
Yeah, and water is important when you're in a desert.
In our culture has a very opposite mythology. It is life-giving, it is life force. Throughout Botswana's kind of national story, we say our currency is named after rain. Yeah. We herald the rain. We have rain and water as a signifier and a good omen of great things. It's everywhere because we have a water scarcity.
Right.
So again, I think it would depend where those audiences were, what medium you were using. What if the wildlife documentary was audio and immersive, like you did on Hidden Histories with Dolby Atmos sound, and you were telling the stories through radio? I would imagine there's a lot of more indigenous people in more rural areas who'd be comfortable lapping that up.
Absolutely.
So again, it depends where you start your story of where the audience is.
This is it.
And who tells the story.
Yeah, and the most important thing is that it gets told. Just make the stuff in whatever medium that you've got. I think about the UK, you know, we do natural history here in the UK as well. We tell the story of foxes and otters and other creatures, badgers and so on and so forth that we have in the UK. So saying that we don't make things in Africa because we're just used to it, I don't think is good enough, because I don't necessarily think that that's 100% true. I don't think it's true at all. So I think just make stuff, tell us those stories and tell it from your unique perspective. Tell us about how your community relates to those animals. I was so surprised when I heard that elephants were considered a pest. I was like, not Nelly. Because Nelly. Here, you know, elephants are really revered. Yeah, we love elephants. They're cute. They've got the trunk.
They're not cute if you live with them. I'm telling you now, there will be Botswana, my mother included, all over, who would literally roll their eyes at that statement because they lived with that. And it's not like we don't care about elephants. We do. We want to conserve them. We have loads of anti-poaching stuff. But to live with that is different to have the Disney storytelling about it.
And you know what's so funny? And I'm going to end on this because it's just brought another point to me. So watching Clarkson's farm, Jeremy Clarkson has a farm in the Cotswolds, I think it is. Yeah. And it follows his journey doing his thing on his farm. He's not particularly good. He's gotten better over time. But one of the things that came up is the badger.
Yeah.
Now, the badger is actually a pest. But the law says you still can't kill them for whatever reason. And so he talks about that, like how the laws are very often at odds with what actually goes on the ground and with the people who actually have to live with badgers every day, because obviously they are a nuisance, you know. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
And just an example of it also being the case here, closer to home in the UK.
Absolutely. What a great segment. Thank you. That was
a
a really, I didn't expect that to be so, I mean, intense, moving and brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're also loving what you're hearing, please make sure you hit the subscribe button and join us for the rest of the journey.
Absolutely. Oh, this is my favorite bit. This is my favorite. I feel like we need the sound of a ring, like, you know, the boxing ring. Ding, 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 ding. And in the red corner, we have Dr. Tamanda Walker. And in the blue corner, we have Election Palava.
That's funny. All right.
Okay,
Are you going to hit me with it?
I'm going to hit you with it.
Yeah.
Well, the boxing metaphor did not help with that entry. So for this final section, it's our community question or comment that we bring to the space. Yeah. And so in this one, we're going to respond to a call out from an old school friend who left a comment under our Black and British episode on YouTube. Now, I'm going to read that comment.
Yeah.
And then I think we just take it from there.
Do we need to give the context for what the episode was about?
Yeah, give us a little synopsis.
Okay. Headline overview in, what was it, episode 8 or something?
It was episode 8.
Okay. In episode 8, we were exploring the idea of what it means to be Black and British and the quite complicated inheritance that can come with that title, Black and British, for Black people. And we were talking about our own relationship to being Black and British, how we had come to be in this country, and how we made sense of that story. And one of the things we were unpacking, particularly towards the end of the episode, was how class is a bigger divider than race or blackness between the two of us in our relationship. There is some colorism, but you grew up working class, I grew up pretty middle class and with quite a lot of privilege. And so in the episode, I spoke about going to a private school in Britain and encountering other Black African people for the first time in that context. I'll leave it there.
Okay, awesome. And here is the comment that was left. I have dipped in and out of some of the episodes to learn more of the Black, British and queer experience. I am a straight Nigerian, one of the posh Yoruba, in quotes, ones Tamanda went to school with. While her comments weren't the worst, I think it is so sad that you have spent almost an hour speaking to the nuances of Black Britishness, whilst Alison has reinforced unsavoury generalisations about loud, in quotes, Nigerians with oil money, in quotes. At Alison... So they
direct to me, okay.
Yeah, so it was like
they added me. So if you at me, you better expect a response.
No, there we go. At Alison, is that the sum total of your experience with the Nigerians you went to school with? That's not what I remember. We all had our issues as teenage girls, but I remember singing, dancing, friendship, silliness, and I guess some trauma from the boarding experience. Again, I cannot speak to your lived experience, but your views are distasteful and dehumanizing. Best of luck with the podcast. Words matter.
Woo!
They had some feelings.
They did.
I want to know what your initial reflections or thoughts were when you saw that comment.
In the moment?
I want to know in the moment, yeah. Because I remember you coming in and I remember thinking, oh, this is not the average comment because we normally don't take them to, you know what I mean? So, go on.
Yeah. I think we were in Portugal at the time and you came into the room I was in.
Yes, that was it.
And I was at the laptop. I think I had, by that point, responded already to the comment, and this was maybe some like 30, 40 minutes later. Mm-hmm. So it was right in the heat of it. And what was my first reaction? I'm not going to lie, when we have done this podcast, we have thought so carefully about what we say, when and how. And we know that we're often towing this line between, we want this thing to be entertaining because we are having important conversations. And if those important conversations are boring, no one's going to listen. But we're also like super careful in the balance between like humor and this thing. So I had spent a lot of time thinking about, if we do this podcast, where is criticism going to come from and where will it not? And I'm not going to lie, I did not anticipate it coming from this quarter. So although in hindsight, it makes complete sense once I thought about it, at the time, I was like mega shocked, mega destabilized, really caught off balance. But I think it was less about the substance of what they said and more about how it was said, actually. And it was, first of all, they switched between calling me Tamanda, which is the name I go by now, and then atting me and calling me Alison, which is my given name, which I don't use for very, very specific reasons, even if they knew me as that. And it was so personal. And then to bring up a set of memories, which I also share with them, in fairness, whoever they are, was really, really odd, because if you're so attached to those memories, you would think we were close enough for you to reach out or for you to frame it. And even the comment was really, to me, I don't know how you read it, but it read as really, it switched from, while it's not so bad what you've said, to this is dehumanizing and terrible. And I was a bit like, wait, which is it? Is it dehumanizing and terrible, or is it not so bad? And it was
because they're two different things.
They are very different things. So my immediate initial response was like, whoa, who is that? Where did that come from? I think one of the things that was actually challenging, like I said, was the how. So it was the fact that I had no idea who it was. So I couldn't even respond. I couldn't take the conversation offline. Yeah. I couldn't understand who the person would be and how to frame a response. I have no problem with people wanting to have a conversation or challenge me. But if you do it anonymously, where do you even start with that? I don't know if you're doing it in good faith. I don't know if you're doing it in bad faith. I have no idea who you are. Yet you are calling me by my name, including a name I don't even use today, which must be obvious from the title of the podcast. That was weird to me. Yeah. That was super weird to me.
It was really strange because it was both personal to you, like you say, and then so anonymous, like not even a sign off or even a little DM afterwards to say that comment was from me, by the way. I just didn't want to put my name on it for whatever reason. I would have respected that more than just this anonymous scathing comment. That's also very, very confusing.
Yeah.
So I guess when you thought about responding, what went through your mind? How did you want to approach it?
Well, actually, that's a really good question, because although I've described a very strong initial reaction, there was something about the way they responded to me that I very quickly realized after many years of therapy was super familiar to me. So it actually didn't take me long at all to kind of compose myself and write a response. Okay. And there were two things that felt like really important to me to tackle in the response. One, the choice of anonymity, which I didn't really receive in great faith, but I think it's part of a bigger social dynamic, which we can get into. And then two, okay, they are whoever they are, whether it was in good faith or bad faith, there are other people watching this podcast, and it felt really important to respond to the thing that they were saying, because other people are part of this conversation once you make it public, and including the comment that you put. So I now have to respond for other people who are watching to what I think is going on here and why we should be talking about this issue.
Okay, yeah, I like that. So, and you did reply.
Oh, I did, yes.
You did reply. And I think I'd like you to read your reply, and then maybe we can get into a little bit about that, about your reply.
It was quite a long reply. Are you okay with that?
I'm okay with that. Yeah, definitely.
So I've got my reply in front of me, and this is what I said. So I said, thank you for your comment. I would genuinely prefer to have a direct conversation about this, as I've clearly struck a nerve and I don't take that lightly. But I'm also responding here because I have no idea who you are. Your profile is entirely anonymous from what I can tell, and that makes it harder to engage meaningfully or with much accountability. On the, quote, posh Yoruba reference, that phrase wasn't really about ethnicity alone. It described a shared classed experience that any of us who went to the school we did, regardless of heritage, occupied a rare space. Only around 6% of people in the UK attend private school, and that comes with a certain social positioning. I include myself in that. I didn't say that everyone came from oil money, but some people did, and that was a visible and obvious part of the landscape that bears witnessing. As for the comment on loudness, I'll go back and listen, but across this and other episodes, we've been intentional about naming cultural generalizations as such, often in the context of our own relationship dynamics, and typically with care and a dose of lightheartedness, because some things can be hard to name and yet must be in the context of relationships and exploring sameness and difference. The commentary I gave is not intended to flatten or present a sum total narrative that is applicable everywhere and at all times. I'm glad your memories include joy, singing, dancing, and friendship. Mine do too, and they sit alongside the other parts I spoke about. This podcast is about holding complex, sometimes contradictory truths, including highly subjective recollections that are not intended to be either prescriptions or authoritative accounts. Our stories and memories don't have to be the same to count. If you'd like to speak directly, I'm open to that, but I need to know who you are as a starting point. Thanks, Tamanda.
Okay. Right.
So that's what I said.
That's what you said.
What do you make of my response?
Well, I have to say, I thought your response was very considered and measured. I thought you were quite gracious.
Really?
Yeah, with what was, I thought, quite it was a scathing comment, you know, but it was also a comment that it was almost like it was really trying to get to the soft parts of you. You know when you're trying to
Attacking
get
the vulnerability
in,
or
the
something.
vulnerabilities,
Yeah.
even like naming you. You know, it's almost like dead naming, for example, someone who doesn't want to be dead named, right?
Yep.
And you're forcing that name back on them, not just once, but twice.
Yeah.
In the one comment, even though you've made it clear that the show is with Aiwan and Tamanda. So you've made it clear that you go by Tamanda now, right?
Do you want to explain what dead naming is? Because there might be people listening who don't know.
Yeah, so dead naming, I think it came about from the trans community. And let's say someone who was assigned male at birth transitions to become a woman and they change their name. If you call them by their old name from when they were a male, right, then that's dead naming. They no longer go by that. That is not who they are anymore. They are this new person, which is a woman, and then you're now dead naming them. And while I know that this isn't the same in terms of the violence of it necessarily, it's still calling you by a name that they know you no longer use.
Yeah, but also they don't know why I don't use it. So although my reasons are it's not the same as people from a trans community, there is actually a reason, which is that I had a sibling who came before me who was supposed to have that name. So out of respect, I don't use that name. I use my middle name.
Right.
So and then they would not know that. But if somebody uses a name, it's also the fact that they switch name.
Yes, they do.
In the comments. It's almost as though to me, they were talking to me or us at the beginning of the comment, and then the second half where they do the Alison almost felt like they had just copied and pasted it from a group chat where they had been talking. Because I think they even, if I'm not mistaken, they might have, when I was listening back, shifted from you to she to this. And I was like, did you just copy and paste that from
a chat or something?
Group? I don't know. It was
because it starts off with I have dipped in and out. I am a straight Nigerian. Why they have to say that they're straight, I don't know. I think it is so sad that you've spent. And then at some point it goes...
whilst Alison has reinforced...
Whilst Alison, has reinforced unsavory generalizations. And then at Alison, is that the sum total of your experience? We all had our issues.
Yeah, it felt like that second half had been said somewhere else first almost. It was really interesting.
It was interesting, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, sorry, I interrupted you mid-flow. You were saying there was the dead naming thing.
Yeah, so I thought that was particularly unnecessary and I think quite hurtful and like, why? But I thought you were quite gracious. Yeah, I did.
I was feeling very open, even though I felt like I was being gracious, to having a proper conversation even after that thing. But then what irritated me and where I was like, okay, we have to bring this, is they then 3 weeks after posting that comment, which I just left up along with my response, they deleted their comment.
Yeah, which then deleted the whole thread, including your response.
Which at that point, it's not even a response for you, it's for other people who are also watching and engaging with the material so that they can understand something. And the thing that I wanted us to be able to talk about was class dynamics between or and amongst Black British people. Like, that is one of the most unspoken conversations.
Yeah.
And if I'm honest, when I looked at the substance of what they said, I did actually go back to the transcript to see if I had said anything out of order. And if I'm completely honest, I don't think I did. Like, I think I made really clear points about how it was so affirming to meet other African students in Britain for the first time. That's how I preceded it. And then I did talk about
the
their different ethnic groups. And definitely how different that culture was from Bots culture. And I'm sorry, but that's just a fact.
It's a fact. I have been to Botswana. I was there last year, and culturally and in terms of just like the temperament and mannerisms of the people, it's very different than Nigeria.
Yeah, and of course I'm making a generalization about Botswana and saying that, but you can compare. To suggest there's no cultural difference is
ridiculous.
Wild.
Yeah.
And
there are cultural differences. Africa is so diverse.
And also, just to add, I had to ask you if there was a stereotype about Yoruba people being loud, because I didn't know the stereotype. So if that is a stereotype, I literally was saying what I saw relative to my own culture.
Yeah.
As for having money and the source of that wealth, I mean, hello.
Facts are facts.
So, and that is where I said, you know, of course, not everybody in that environment came from oil money, nor like I didn't, but some very blatantly did, and it's out there in the public domain.
Yeah.
Like, why are we going to argue about that?
Exactly.
That to me was where I said, I composed myself quickly because it felt familiar.
Okay.
And the thing that felt familiar to me is, let's say I've talked a lot about my white family members and how they respond when I speak about whiteness. It felt as if naming of class, which, if I'm honest, felt like the bigger factor than the Yoruba culture thing, that seemed to produce a fragile response.
Yes.
And a very defensive response. And maybe the ethnicity was also bound up in it. Fine, you can say that. But it felt like this person has said the thing that we all benefit from not saying.
Exactly.
And now I'm going to have a very immediate defensive reaction.
Yes.
And then because of the tone of their response, which felt laced in a kind of respectability, which is the same kind of respectability politics we see when we talk about class, when we talk about whiteness. It felt like, oh, I know this dynamic. It may have come from a different source, but I have seen this my whole life.
Yes.
And I'm actually very well equipped to understand what's going on. And that is why we have to talk about class difference in our communities, because that was the point of the episode.
Yeah. And we will continue to do so. I mean, in fact, next week, we are literally going to talk about class and privilege within the Black community.
The African community specifically.
Within the Black African community. We're going to talk about that.
Yep.
And we're going to go in.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Because this show, it's called Rigour and Flow for a reason. The Rigour is rigorous conversations on the issues and the topics of our time to help us have, a language. To help us to have a language, you know what I mean? It's not like as if we get everything right and we have all the language, but certainly we'd like to at least be part of that conversation and start something. You know?
And also we have a community segment where we invite people to share questions, provocations, to disagree with us.
Yes.
So like for
me... We love conversation. We love it.
Yeah.
You know?
And for me, this would have been an ideal opportunity for dialogue. Like just say the thing you want to say with your name in a reasonable way and we will address it.
Absolutely.
We'll even invite you on the show. We'll ask you to send us a voice note and we'll respond. Like this is the whole point of this thing.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think we love conversation and we love hearing from the people that listen to the show. We love having our thinking challenged and we love expanding our thinking and our views and perspectives on the world. So, definitely reach out if you have a comment on this episode or any of the other episodes. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review. And if you're on the audio platforms like Spotify or Apple, then definitely rate the podcast because it really does help people to know about what we're doing. And I think that's it for us.
Well, I've got one more thing I want to say, which is that We have a community voice notes segment now where you can drop us a voice note anytime you like on whatever you want to say. So we're going to link to that in the show notes.
Exactly. And we will see you next week.
See you next time.